Hello! Today I would like to present to you a review of American Conquest. Happens to be one of the first games that I have ever played. It's a real-time strategy that's over 2 decades old, set during the time when the European colonial powers paid a friendly visit to the American continent, and then proceeded to peacefully explain to each other to whom which part would belong. Specifically, I will be talking about the standalone expansion American Conquest Fight Back, but most of what I say will apply to the base game as well. The expansion pack adds 5 more nations, bringing the total to 17, new campaigns, single missions, and a battle mode, which is basically a series of single missions that focus completely on combat. Something of note, considering the game's age, may be that while the graphics are 2D, the terrain is actually 3D. This can be important sometimes, but the real meat of the game are the massive battles, with up to 60,000 soldiers, conducted on huge maps. Apart from fighting, you also build up your base, but more about that later. As I go along, I will make some comparisons with Cossacks, a game made in the same engine by the same studio, GSC Game World. Also, when I refer to Cossacks, I'm talking about the Cossacks Back to War, just making sure that's clear. Also, I personally play with health bars always visible, but that's something completely optional. In fact, they are off by default. Having them on the hand shows not only hit points, but also if their soldiers' weapons are loaded, and in the case of buildings, how many troops are inside. And before I forget, the music in here in the background is part of the game's soundtrack. So first, economy. For being able to send troops into battle, you usually start by building a base, collecting resources, and researching technologies and upgrades. Similar to Cossacks, you have to manage secret resources, but in American Conquest, gathering resources is not identical for every nation. Most nations, in fact almost all of them, will gather food by harvesting crops, with the exception of the Sioux, which have to rely more on hunting. Only native factions can fish, and without food your units will starve, which will quickly annihilate your population. Wood is predictably gathered by chopping down trees. And then we have another difference. All European and South American nations have access to mines that collect stone, iron, coal and gold. North American nations can't build mines. Instead, they can build trading posts which give them a constant trickle of gold and allow them to exchange resources. But in return, their peasants can be captured and they are equipped with bows for hunting, or well, the arrows aren't very picky about their targets. Most range units consume certain resources to fire. For example, archers consume wood, firearms will need iron and coal. A small number of units need salaries in gold, and if you can't pay them, they will rebel. The main thing limiting how many buildings you can create is the exceptional increase of their cost. It is also important to remember that to train most soldiers you first need to send a peasant inside. And don't forget that when a building is researching upgrades or training units, its defensive functions are suspended. One annoying thing might be that most combat units have 14 unit-specific upgrades, 7 for melee attack and 7 for a combination of defense and morale. These upgrades might seem small, but first, they add up, and second, considering you'll be commanding armies of thousands, every little improvement matters a lot. Unfortunately, it gets worse. Some nations have unique technologies which change units completely. The Delvares, for example, have an upgrade called Conduct Skull Dance, which increases their pikemen hit points by 1000%. Sounds overpowered? It sure isn't, because their pikemen start with only 10 hit points. Pikemen of other nations usually have around 90 hit points without any upgrades, so after the special one-of-the-kind upgrade, Delvares pikemen just go from being pathetically weak to alright. Before I move on, there are 2 similarities to Cossacks I want to point out. One, you can recruit priests, or shamans in the case of the natives, that can heal your troops, and 2, you can build ferries to move your troops across the water. And now, the most important part, combat. Here we can stop comparing with Cossacks, because almost every aspect of warfare will be different. We've got things like ranged units, needing a clear line of sight before they can shoot. You can order them to fire into crowds containing friendly troops, but don't, it's literally never worth it. Buildings can be garrisoned, soldiers can shoot from them through windows and such, but they have limited firing arcs. There is an experience system. With every kill, most units get a bonus to their melee attack and morale. Some units get larger bonuses per kill than others, like cavalry for example. And oh yeah, we have the complete morale system that takes into account effects of firearms, whether the enemy is on horseback, proximity to friendly cities, being in a formation, how outnumbered your soldiers are and how many casualties they have suffered. Next, there is a diplomacy system, which allows you to hire mercenaries from neutral tribes that you can control, or you can have them attack your enemies directly. On top of that, you have access to a sizable roster of diverse nations, and here we are starting to get into some problems in how that's balanced, or rather how it isn't. The issues are most profound when comparing the European and Native American nations. They don't end there, but let's focus on that for now. Natives have an advantage in the early game. They can make large armies quickly, and their units move much faster than the European ones. Finally, they have archers that can set fire to the enemy's buildings. European nations, on the other hand, take a bit more time to get going, but in return completely dominate the endgame. Their units are better armored and most of them have firearms, this applies to buildings too. These two things already give them a massive lead. But what's the European equivalent of the natives' fire arrows, a weapon for razing enemy buildings? Well, it's cannons. Yeah, it takes some time to research them and they are quite expensive. In return, however, you get to fire projectiles at extreme ranges. The cannonballs will smash through anyone that gets in their way and explode at the end of their journey. You may think that's a bit much, but it's not even all. If the enemy gets too close, you can order your cannons to fire a grape shot, annihilating anything that's in front of them. Since I already mentioned cannons, let's take a closer look at them. They are a perfect example of how much work was put into making this game and how much attention was given to details. Apart from being able to use multiple types of ammunition, they have a fully animated crew for every possible action, pushing, rotating, setting up, and so on. Moreover, they can be ordered to prepare to fire, which calls them to perform the wind-up animation early, allowing them to fire instantly when the order is given, as long as they don't need to rotate, turn towards the target of course. In the economy section I mentioned that the natives can gather food by fishing, so they have an incentive to control the waters. But how can the natives compete when their navy is composed of canoes with archers, whilst the European powers deploy carracks and frigates armed with, yeah, you probably guessed it, cannons? Natives can only hope, the only hope is preventing the Europeans from getting a foothold in the waters in the first place. Otherwise, not only will they be denied the sea, but their structures near the coast will be swiftly destroyed. Besides, even similar factions are plagued by imbalance. Some get very strong unique units, while others get worthless ones. For example, the Fusiliers of the USA have double the fire rate and melee damage. What's more, they will not betray you when we run out of gold. This is supposed to be balanced by their more expensive cost and slower recruitment time, but their stats are just too good. In comparison, the Fusiliers of other nations are hardly ever worth training. On the other hand, French arquebusiers have a strong melee attack, higher attack rate, and are produced twice as fast. But in turn, they have less armor, hit points, storm forms, which is important when capturing buildings, and are more expensive. The problem here is that arquebusiers' high armor and storm forms is what makes them great at defending and taking buildings. The French variant trades them away for a better melee performance. Consequently, you get a ranged unit to always lose a firefight, but can beat other ranged units in melee. It will still lose to specialized melee units like the pikemen that all European nations have. The AI is a strange mix. I wouldn't say it's good, but it sure is challenging. It cheats obviously, but seems to be quite smart about finding weak points in your defenses sometimes. Its capability to react almost instantly and microing thousands of units will become your bane whenever you try to attack it. My last gripe is the massive defender's advantage, especially for the European cities. They are extremely hard to capture, which in my experience causes the games to drag on for hours. To make things worse, single-player missions often place you in a situation where the exact same thing can happen no matter what nation you're up against. And for a summary, personally I feel that in trying to make such a diverse and large roster of units, while simultaneously adding many interesting and complex mechanics, which you won't see in Cossacks, the creators were not able to properly balance them. American Conquest was never as successful as Cossack or Stalker, so it's no wonder GSC focused on the better performing franchises. This attempt at making unique and innovative RTS games would be repeated by them a few times. By trying something new and different every time, they would never get the chance to polish their ideas like they did with Cossacks. Still completely blinded nostalgia, I give American Conquest 9 out of 10 arquebusiers. Lastly, I invite you to leave a comment. Do you agree with my assessment? Have you ever heard about this game? And if you want to see more, like and subscribe. Bye.